Wayne Rainey was always chasing the impossible, but what he left behind was even more shocking. The truth wasn't loud, it was buried. Watch until the end because what they found will shock you. The garage no one dared to enter. When Wayne Rainey died in 1993, the world mourned a legend. Tributes poured in from every continent. Broadcasters looped footage of his jumps, his crashes, his recoveries, and his signature white and blue suits. But far from the cameras and away from the glossy documentaries, something else remained. A warehouse on the edge of Butte, Montana. Quiet, locked, and unlisted in any official probate file. The building didn't look like much. It sat behind a chain-link fence near an old mining yard, its windows blacked out, its loading dock rusted. Most people assumed it was part of some forgotten industrial lease, but a few neighbors whispered otherwise. Some claimed they had seen motorcycles wheeled in during the early 90s, always at night, always under wraps. Others swore they heard the sound of engines long after Rainey had retired from public stunts. When lawyers were assigned to settle Rainey's estate, the garage was little more than a rumor. There were no titles linked to the property, no keys found among his possessions. The first time the legal team tried to access it, they were stopped by an outdated security system and an ambiguous set of property rights. Ownership was split across shell companies, some tied to Rainey, some to long-defunct business partners. The family declined to comment. Rainey's son, Robbie, refused all interviews. A cousin in Nevada claimed he didn't even know the building existed. It took more than 18 months of legal wrangling, subpoenas, and quiet backroom agreements before the locks were legally breached. And when they were, the team didn't arrive with cameras or curiosity. They came with clipboards, fireproof gloves, and silence. The first thing they noticed wasn't what was inside, it was the air itself. Heavy, undisturbed, and electric with the weight of something deliberately left behind. But the real gravity of the place wouldn't hit them until they saw what stood beneath those tarps. We've done the deep dive into Wayne Rainey's secret garage and the untold story behind his legacy. If you're as shocked by the hidden truth as we were, drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button to show your support for uncovering the deeper side of legendary figures like Rainey. 30 bikes in a tomb of silence. There were no bright overhead lights, no showroom platforms, and no security glass. Just the dim, dusty glow of warehouse fluorescents struggling against time. And beneath them, 30 motorcycles parked shoulder to shoulder, each one covered in thick canvas. No labels, no signs, just silence and dust. It was like stepping into a chapel of motion, suspended. The bikes weren't arranged by brand, type, or chronology. They were grouped in a pattern that only made sense to Rainey. Some faced the wall. Others were angled toward the exit as if awaiting a green light that would never come. The canvas covers weren't thrown on. They were tucked, smoothed, preserved with care. The legal team, tasked with documenting assets, hesitated before touching anything. What struck them most wasn't the value of the machines, but the untouched atmosphere of the space. Along the back wall were framed photos that had never been published, stunts at strange angles, close calls that had never made it to air. Some had notes scrawled on the back, names of cities, or simply too close. On a workbench lay a full set of tools, each piece in its designated slot, the arrangement geometrically precise. A thin layer of oil coated the metal, still slightly tacky after all those years. Racing jackets hung nearby, most familiar, some never worn in public, their stitching pristine like they'd been made for stunts that never happened. And then, near the entrance, a pegboard, still clinging to it. A faded calendar from 2004, the month of May. One date circled in red, May 12th. There was no note, no context, just a ring around a moment in time. The room didn't feel curated, it felt paused, like Rainey had stepped out for a moment expecting to return, but it had been nearly 2 decades since anyone touched this place, and beneath the canvas, what they found next changed the entire story. Some legacies are built in silence. If you still ride, ride with gear that's built to last. We linked our most trusted jackets, gloves, and tools in the description. The machines that weren't meant for roads. The first bike they uncovered didn't match any record. It had no serial number, no factory badge, and no documentation. Its frame was impossibly thin but reinforced with riveted joints, a combination of aircraft-grade aluminum and custom-bent steel tubing. It didn't look like a Harley. It didn't look like anything from Triumph or Indian. It looked like something Rainey had made from scratch, and it wasn't alone. One by one, the covers were peeled back to reveal machines that blurred the line between engineering and imagination. a long-body chopper with a rear swing arm so exaggerated it looked like it belonged on a dragster, a compact racer with a minimalist seat, and a hand-shaped fairing built entirely from carbon fiber, years before such materials were widely used. One bike had no visible ignition system at all. Instead, a cluster of electronics suggested it may have been electric, a decade ahead of schedule. These weren't prototypes for public sale. They were experiments, machines born not from sponsorship deals, but from late-night sketches and stubborn invention. Scribbled notes were taped to the handlebars. Reduce drag on lift, test flight response, too hot on descent. Rainey hadn't just ridden motorcycles. He had evolved them. Quietly, alone. Taped to one seat was a name, Danny. Another, Mick. It became clear these bikes weren't only for him. Some may have been intended as gifts, others possibly for apprentices who never showed. A few bore modifications meant for riders far smaller than Rainey ever was. To the world, Wayne Rainey was a performer, a man who leapt buses and defied physics. But in this garage, away from applause and interviews, he had been something else entirely. A builder, a tinkerer, a man obsessed not with fame, but with form. And yet, even among these experiments, there was one presence that lingered darker than the rest. May 12th, marked in blood. The calendar still hung there, unchanged, May of 2004. All the dates bare, except May 12th, circled in red ink so thick it bled through the page, no explanation, no event name, just a mark. When the legal team turned back to the rows of bikes, something shifted. Not in the room, but in the pattern. Beneath another tarp was a motorcycle unlike the rest. Its fairing was split. Paint bubbled with heat damage. The foot pegs bent in opposite directions. This was not an invention, it was a wreck. The frame had been repainted in parts, but the tank still bore a deep scar nearly welded shut. On the underside, someone had scrawled a date, 5/12. This wasn't an error, it was a memorial, and it wasn't the only one. 4 more bikes in the back corner showed similar injuries: fractured handlebars, twisted forks, scorch marks near the seat. Each bore quiet evidence of a stunt gone wrong, and each one in its own way had been reassembled. Not fully, not for resale, but enough to look whole if you didn't look too closely. Next to one frame was a rag still soaked in something dark. Beneath another, an old compression wrap stained brown. The smell of antiseptic still clung to the metal cabinet nearby. Rainey had kept his failures. Not to mourn them, but to mend them. Piece by piece, bolt by bolt, he had tried to make right what gravity had torn apart. He never spoke of these crashes in interviews, never showed these bikes to fans. He rebuilt them in secret, like a man confessing through steel. But that red circle, May 12th, remained unexplained. It was the only date marked in that entire garage, and just when they thought they'd cataloged the worst of it, they discovered the machine that should have never existed at all. The Sky Gunner. He was too wise to ride. Tucked behind a wall of crates and worn cabinets was the most fearsome machine in Wayne Rainey's garage, one even he wouldn't touch. It looked like a Harley-Davidson at first, heavy with muscle and chrome, but closer inspection revealed something almost surgical. Twin rocket boosters, side-mounted and reinforced with aerospace-grade alloy. A reinforced frame, exhaust ports sealed with aviation-grade plating, and on the side welded like a secret 2 words, Sky Gunner. The blueprints were found sealed in a laminated binder. They were dated from the mid-1980s. Rainey had drawn them himself, measured with obsessive precision, annotated in jagged red ink. The goal? To clear the length of a full football stadium from end to end, using twin boosters to assist liftoff at over 130 miles per hour. A margin note in his own handwriting read, "If I die, let it be loud." The bike was fully built, tuned, prep, but it had never even touched the start switch. Rainey, who once defied gravity in front of 50,000 people, never so much as rolled this one onto a ramp. He kept it hidden, not from the press, but from himself. And in doing so, he revealed something the public never saw: restraint. The man who was built on spectacle had finally learned to hold back, not because he lacked courage, but because he understood cost. This was not a stunt. It was a temptation he resisted, and it changed everything we thought we knew about the man behind the myth. But Rainey's silence didn't stop at machines. In the back of a locked cabinet, someone found something even more personal. Something caught on tape but never meant to be played. The footage. He couldn't bear to release. It was buried in a fireproof box beneath race credentials, tax files, and expired licenses. Dozens of reels, some labeled in careful pen, others marked with only codes. The one that changed everything was tagged KC Alt Cut. It looked like a backup edit for a stunt reel, but what it contained was a portrait of Rainey no one had ever seen. It opened with silence. A dim garage late at night. Rainey, wrapped in a towel, bandaging a gash along his ribs. He winces, groans, fumbles for the lens. Then the audio clicks in. They think I'm fearless. I just don't show them the parts that scare the hell out of me. For the next 45 minutes, the footage becomes a mosaic of unfiltered moments. Failed jumps, camera crew arguments, Rainey pacing a hotel room in the dark, whispering monologues to himself. You jump enough times, you start to wonder if gravity's not chasing you. There were clips of him limping, shouting at engineers, dropping tools, breaking into tears, then quickly hiding his face. The reel had clearly never been cut for public view. The transitions were jarring, the sound unmastered, but every frame burned with truth. He didn't hide his fear because he was ashamed. He hid it because the audience only came for invincibility. And maybe, just maybe, he feared that without the costume, there was nothing left to love. But then the camera pans past something else in the corner. Something soft, small, and entirely unexpected. A miniature motorcycle, painted red, sitting next to a letter addressed to a child Rainey never met. The bikes built for children who'd never ride. Behind a row of battered Triumphs wrapped in plastic sheeting and drop cloths was a space no camera had ever seen. No ramps, no posters, no stunt gear, just a quiet corner lit by the single overhead bulb. And there, lined up like memories that never got made, were 6 miniature motorcycles, no taller than a man's knee. Hand-painted tanks, chrome handlebars, seats fitted for small frames, and on each one, a name tag. Not price tags, not brand labels, just first names. Sophie, JT, Marcus, Allie. Records nearby revealed they were children from across the country, most with severe disabilities, some with terminal diagnoses. Parents had written to Rainey in the late 1980s and early 1990s, letters thanking him, begging for hope. Rainey had promised bikes and he built them himself, but none were delivered. The letters were still there, stacked neatly, never mailed. The parents never followed up. Maybe they didn't expect anything. Maybe they moved on. Some of the children passed before the bikes were completed. Others outgrew their conditions or outgrew the hope, but the bikes stayed, waiting, untouched. There was no mention of them in his estate plan, no media footage, no tax deduction. It wasn't charity, it was quiet grief, disguised as craftsmanship. Wayne Rainey, who made a career out of jumping into danger for spectacle, had also built joy in secret for kids who would never ride. Not for money, not for cameras, just because he could. And tucked beside the last mini bike was something else, a letter. Folded, addressed simply to Harley. It wasn't soft, it wasn't sweet, and it wasn't ever sent, but it might have been the most honest thing Rainey ever wrote. The letter Harley-Davidson never saw. It was found folded into quarters, buried inside a faded manila envelope marked press materials. But this wasn't a press release, it was a confession, a confrontation, a handwritten letter addressed to a single name, to Harley. And what it contained rattled even the most loyal fans of the brand. Rainey began with reverence. He thanked Harley-Davidson for giving him the machines that launched a legend. He named engineers he admired, referenced the old jump specs he loved. But halfway down the second page, the tone shifted. He accused the company of losing its fire, of chasing merchandise instead of metal, of swapping soul for licensing deals. We made each other, he wrote, but you left the table too early. He claimed the bikes had changed, grown heavier, slower, less reckless, less brave. Rainey felt betrayed, not by people, but by the machine that had once mirrored his madness. The letter was dated sometime in the early 1990s. It had clearly been read many times, creases worn thin, the ink faded from touch. The final paragraph had been violently scratched out with a ballpoint pen until the page tore. Rainey never mailed it. No one knows why. Maybe he thought better of it. Maybe he feared what it would break, or maybe he knew it wouldn't change a thing. But that unsent letter was not a rant. It was a reckoning. A daredevil speaking to a company that had once been his mirror, and it showed the real fracture. Rainey didn't just want to ride, he wanted to believe. In steel, in freedom, in legacy. But the letter wasn't the only thing he left behind that spoke louder than any jump. In a locked drawer, buried beneath years of dust and denim, they found something even more haunting. Proof that Wayne Rainey wasn't just chasing flight. He was trying to leave something grounded behind. The will no court could use. In the corner of the garage, behind a crate of jumpsuits and unopened boxes of promotional helmets, a rust-stained filing cabinet sat sealed with an old chain looped through its handles. When the estate team finally cut it open, they found something no one expected: a grease-smudged manila envelope marked simply, "Read this first." Inside was a document, not typed, not notarized, not even dated properly, but unmistakably written in Wayne Rainey's hand. It was a will, or rather something like one, a vision, a confession, a plan for what should happen after he was gone. But it didn't mention fame. It didn't divide up property. It didn't name beneficiaries by legal name. Instead, it spoke of garages, of tools, of kids who never had a shot. Rainey had written that everything, his bikes, his royalties, his memorabilia, should be used to fund a program for underprivileged mechanics, a mentorship initiative, a place where forgotten teens could learn to weld, build, fix, and maybe even fly. He wrote about growing up poor, about not being taught to build, only taught to jump. "Maybe we should teach the other thing," he scribbled in the margin. But none of it held up in court. The will had never been filed. It contradicted the formal documents already processed years earlier. It wasn't legal. It wasn't enforceable. It was just paper, heart, and oil. Still, it revealed something Rainey never said out loud. That legacy wasn't about applause. It was about giving someone else a chance to chase freedom. And that truth only deepened when they opened the final box. The one marked with a name no lawyer had authority over. The letters to a son who locked them away. There was no ceremony when the box marked Rob was found. Just silence. It sat behind Rainey's desk, beneath a folded American flag and a stack of canceled checks. Inside were letters, dozens of them, some yellowed with age, others written just months before Rainey's death, all addressed to his son. They weren't lectures. They weren't scripted. Some were a single paragraph. Others ran pages, but each one felt like Rainey had been trying to explain a life lived at full throttle and a legacy passed down without permission. "I didn't give you the boots," one note read. "I gave you the mountain." Another, barely legible through oil smudges, admitted, "You were supposed to fly further than me, but I never asked if you wanted to." Many of the letters trailed off mid-thought, interrupted by schematics, weather notes, or old stunt sketches. Rainey wrote like a man still moving, still thinking in turns and throttle. But underneath the scribbles was something clear: guilt. One note warned Robbie never to trust the people who clapped the loudest. Another described the fear Rainey had never confessed in interviews, not of crashing, but of disappearing. "If they forget me," he wrote, "they forget why we ever jumped." Robbie had locked the letters away after Rainey's funeral. He wasn't ready. Not then. But now, years later, he read them all. And in that final note, dated 3 months before Rainey's death, he found the one line that said everything Rainey never could: "Don't make my mistakes, make your own." But beneath those letters was something else. Folded blueprints, taped to the back of a note labeled "One Last Ride." Freedom Jump, a stunt no one was supposed to understand. They found the blueprints folded into a faded manila envelope tucked behind a stack of gas tanks. The ink had bled at the corners. Some lines were smudged with oil. The handwriting was unmistakable. Wayne Rainey had drawn them himself. Ramp measurements, stunt angles, wind calculations, even a hand-drawn rendering of a modified Harley fitted with a detachable chute pack and rear flame deflector. At the top of the page, underlined twice, Freedom Jump. It wasn't just another stadium stunt. It was something else, something spiritual. Rainey had sketched a full-scale escape trajectory as if the goal wasn't to land at all, but to disappear. A single note was stapled to the corner: "If this works, tell them I'm free." The mechanics who discovered it were stunned. They remembered Rainey's final year. Quieter, more reflective, less animated. He wasn't planning new shows. He was planning something symbolic. The stunt was technically possible, but almost impossible to survive. The jump would have required a firewall, a long arc over an artificial canyon, and a last-minute parachute ejection, unlike anything he had ever attempted. He never built it, never mentioned it, never showed it to anyone, not even his crew chief. Some believe it wasn't meant to happen. Others say it was his final confession, disguised as blueprints, not a cry for attention, but a ritual, his own private dare against mortality itself. Whatever the truth, the freedom jump revealed a man who had grown tired of landing, who was no longer chasing applause, who had built the ultimate act of departure, then chosen to stay grounded. But Rainey wasn't the only one who chose silence over spectacle. Our research uncovered the hidden side of Wayne Rainey's life that no one else is talking about. If you're blown away by the discoveries we found, make sure to leave a like and comment with your thoughts. Did you expect this level of secrecy from such a public figure? The daughter who closed the door. She arrived alone, without cameras, without ceremony. No documentary crew followed her. No press releases were written. Just Rainey's daughter stepping into the garage like someone entering a cathedral built of chrome and oil. She wore an old hoodie, jeans stained at the cuffs, and one of her father's riding gloves folded into her back pocket. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Inside, the light filtered through cracked windows, catching dust on the tanks and handlebars. She moved through the space slowly, one hand trailing across the leather seats, the other holding an old Polaroid of her as a child sitting on the edge of a trailer ramp. Her father behind her, not in uniform, just in a denim shirt and grease-streaked smile. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stood there looking at the machines as if they were frozen memories. Not trophies. Not relics. Just echoes. There were no stunts replaying on monitors, no sound of throttles. Just quiet, deep, respectful, earned. And then she did something that no one expected. She locked the door. Not to bury the legacy, not to erase it, but to preserve it from being turned into a gift shop, to stop the world from turning her father into a caricature. She left no note, no plaque, just a final gesture of control, a decision to protect a place that held not just her father's story, but the weight of everything he never said. And even then, one last question remained. Not about the jumps, not about the money, but about the man himself and what he really wanted us to remember. Wayne Rainey didn't leave a legend, he left a question. The final truth about Wayne Rainey wasn't buried in a trophy case or a Guinness World Record. It wasn't wrapped in red, white, and blue or plastered on lunchboxes and action figures. It was far more uncomfortable than that. It was a question. Wayne Rainey didn't want to be remembered for what he jumped. He wanted to be remembered for what he didn't. He had every chance to sell out, to automate, to let someone else write the ending, but he refused. In his final years, he turned down fortune, walked away from reinvention, and chose to build things no one would ever see. Not because he wanted to be forgotten, but because he didn't want to be misunderstood. The real Wayne Rainey wasn't the stuntman on TV. It was the man who stared at a machine built to kill him and walked away. It was the father who wrote unsent letters, the craftsman who built bikes for children he never met, the philosopher who scribbled questions no one ever answered, and maybe never will. He didn't flinch in the face of danger, but he also didn't flinch when faced with restraint. And that might be the greatest leap of all. So in the end, what did Wayne Rainey leave behind? Not just chrome and leather, not just broken bones and camera reels. He left behind a story with no easy ending. He left a blueprint of contradictions. He left us a question we're still answering. And somehow that makes him more real than ever. Now that you've seen the truth behind Rainey's legacy, don't miss out on what's happening in the world of Harley-Davidson right now. Check out our latest video to learn more about a massive recall that's affecting thousands of riders. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.